But then we must remember, we must not put the blame, everything on past life karma, because the law of karma does not only concern past life karma, it also concerns present life karma. If you say that everything is due to past life karma, then we don't do anything, just sit down and wait for karma to bring us everything. Evidently, you can see that it's not the way life works. A very good example you can see is, for example, you think of a student in the Form 5 trying to study to get 10 A's. So we consider 3 types of students. The first one, he couldn't be bothered to study, but he goes around praying. He goes to this temple, go to that Dato Kong, and go everywhere praying, trying to get 10 A's. But he refused to study. So can he get 10 A's? Evidently he won't, isn't it? Why? Because he doesn't put in the effort, he doesn't put in the karma. He only relies on past karma. The second student, he studies very hard, but unfortunately he's born not very smart. But he works very hard, burns the midnight oil, stays up to 12 o'clock, sleeps 6 hours, and every day he studies very hard. Perhaps he might get 2 or 3 A's, but he won't get 10 A's because he's not very smart. So the third student is born very intelligent, very smart, and on top of that he studies very hard. That is the type of person who will get 10 A's. So the second category of student, he studied very hard, that is present life karma. But he did not get the support of past life karma. He didn't have the intelligence from past life to support him. That's why he did not succeed. Whereas the third type of student, he had the support from the previous life karma, being born very smart, and also work the present life karma. Both working together, past life karma plus present life karma, can get us what we want. There's something we have to remember. And then because of that, the Buddha said that we should strive. The Buddha said, the Buddhas only show the way. Striving should be done by you. So like, if we understand the Dhamma, we want to walk the good way, the Dhamma only guides us. We have to do it ourselves. That's why people say Buddhism is a do-it-yourself religion. Now, in one sutta, the Buddha said, concerning the doing of karma, before we do any karma, we have to reflect. This karma that I'm going to do, either through the body, through the speech, or through the mind, is it going to harm somebody? Or is it going to harm myself? If it's going to harm somebody or harm myself, I should not do it. But if it's going to benefit some other person or being, or it's going to benefit myself, then I should do it, and do it again and again. So that is, before you do the karma, you must reflect. And then even while we are doing the karma, the Buddha said we should also reflect. In the midst of doing the karma, you must reflect whether what I'm doing now is right or not. It's right or wrong. If it's right, I continue to do. If it's wrong, I should stop immediately. Because sometimes before doing, you forgot to contemplate. So while you are doing, you contemplate. Or sometimes before doing, you forgot. During the doing also, you forgot. Then after doing that karma, we still should reflect back and think carefully that what you did yesterday or 3 days ago or 1 week ago or 1 month ago, whether that was correct or not. Whether you should have done it or you should not have done it. So when we reflect this way, then it's very useful to always live our life very skillfully. Because if we live our life very skillfully, then we will avoid unnecessary suffering. Another very good criterion of karma is whether a karma is good karma that should be done, or a karma is wrong that should not be done. Is, the Buddha said, if it leads to an increase in wholesome states of mind or a decrease in unwholesome states of mind in yourself or in others, then you should do it. That is good karma. Good karma leads to an increase in wholesome states in yourself or others, or a decrease in unwholesome states in yourself or others. What is wholesome states? Wholesome states are good states of mind, happy states of mind, like non-attachment, goodwill instead of ill will, tranquil mind instead of a restless mind, not being jealous of others, etc. So this kind of wholesome state of mind gives you peace, gives you a happy state. Whereas unwholesome states of mind are those states that make you agitated, make you unhappy. So that is a very good criterion to remember. On the other hand, if the converse, then it is bad karma or evil karma. Wrong karma or unwholesome karma leads to a decrease in wholesome states or an increase in unwholesome states. That kind of karma we should avoid. Now in one sutta the Buddha said that not all suffering is due to karma. Sometimes we can have some suffering, but it is possible it might not be due to karma. Besides karma, other factors that could cause us suffering could be, for example, the weather. For example, Kuching, suddenly you get pollution index of 1000. That causes you a lot of suffering. That is not your personal karma. That might be due to some other factors. So it might be due to weather. Another one might be due to your body, unbalance of wind or unbalance of heat or bile or phlegm, etc. That also could cause you suffering. Another one could be due to carelessness. Another could be due to accident. But usually a lot of things happen because of karma. So for example, if a person is careless while he drinks and drives, maybe he gets involved in an accident and he passes away. If it is due to his carelessness or accident, that means his karma as a human being is not finished. Then he will probably come back reborn as a human being. But if it is due to karma that he has finished his karma as a human being, then he gets involved in an accident, then he won't be reborn as a human being. He will be reborn in another plane of existence. So that is one other thing to remember. Not everything is due to karma. Now, there are 5 grave karmic offences, where the most serious karmic offences are mentioned in the suttas. The first one is if you shed intentionally, purposely shed the blood of a Buddha. That means you harm a Buddha. That's the first one. That will definitely bring you to hell the next lifetime. The second one is you kill Arahant. Killing an Arahant. That's also very serious. Another one is you kill your own mother. The fourth one, you kill your own father. The last one, you have a group of monks living in harmony. You go and split them. You tell lies or you create disharmony and make the monks divide. These 5 types of offences can bring you to hell the next birth and make you stay there for a long time. The working of karma is very complex. The Buddha said in one sutta that 4 things you should not think too much about. If you think too much about these 4 things, you'll go a bit cuckoo. One is the power of a Buddha. Second one is the depth of jhana. The third one is karma. The fourth one is speculation about the future of the world. These 4 things. Now why is it karma is not to be thought of? Because karma is very complex, The working of karma depends not only on your present lifetime. It depends on many lifetimes. Unsettled accounts karmic accounts from many lifetimes have to be taken into account. On top of that, if you create a karma, what the result of it depends on your state of mind at that moment, and also the state of mind of the other person you do the karma to. For example, if you make an offering to a murderer, to a criminal, to an evil person, then your merit is very small. But you make an offering to a holy man, then your merit, your blessings is very great. Similarly, the converse, if you kill a holy man, then your karmic offense is very great. Whereas you kill a mosquito, karma not so bad. Because I'm not encouraging you to kill a mosquito. And because working of karma is very complex, sometimes we find it a bit hard to understand, Why? Because sometimes we see there are certain persons, you consider them as evil persons, uncouth, rough persons, are very stingy, very offensive, and yet the fellow is having a good life, driving a Mercedes Benz, or he might even be doing evil things, like peddling drugs or something, and yet he's having a very good life. Sometimes this could be due to his good karma from the past, and that good karma from the past life is supporting him. And now he's creating a lot of bad karma which has not ripened yet. So because of that, we find it very hard sometimes to see, sometimes people comment, this world is not fair. The good people are not the ones who are happy. You see a lot of evil people are happy. So that's because the working of karma is very difficult to see. Unless we have psychic power, then we can look into the past, look into his past life, then only we can understand. There's one very important sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 5.5.43, where the Buddha said, there are certain things in the world that everybody wants, that everybody values, but very hard to get. For example, being beautiful, having a very healthy body, being very happy, having a long life, and after you pass away, to have a good rebirth. These kind of things everybody wants, but are very hard to get. And the Buddha said these kind of things are not to be got only by prayers and vows, or even thinking about them every day. If you only pray and make vows, it's useless. You have to walk the way that brings you to what you want. Buddha said, if only by praying and making vows you can get what you want, why is there so much suffering in the world? There's a very good example. Is just now you mentioned about that student trying to get 10 A's, but he doesn't want to study. He goes and prays and make vows and goes from Datokong to Datokong, and yet he does not get his 10 A's. So what the Buddha means is that we have to walk the path that brings us to what we want. That means if you want long life, then you must not kill. If you don't kill, then you don't even have to pray for it. Long life will come naturally. Of course, it's natural for most people when they are suffering to pray. And sometimes when we pray, our prayers are answered. But actually, according to the Buddha's teachings, our prayers are answered mainly because we have that supporting karma. If the supporting karma is not there, sometimes, for example, a person might be very, very rich, and then suddenly he gets cancer. And then he goes all around the world to get the best specialists in the world. But if his karma is not supporting him, even the best doctors come from America, UK, Europe, still that person will die. Whereas another person might be very poor and perhaps also have cancer. But if the karma is supporting him, he might not even have the money to go to some specialist center. Somebody recommend him some herb or ask him to drink urine. and then he recovers. See? So that's how karma is so important in supporting us. Now there's another very important sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 42.8.6. One day the Buddha came to a certain village of Brahmins, and these Brahmins came to talk to the Buddha. So the Buddha came to this Brahmin village, and the Brahmins came to talk to the Buddha, and they said to the Buddha, they said, Lord, there is a type of Brahmins in the West, they have a peculiar tradition, besides the tradition of carrying water and bathing in the river 3 times a day. They believe that when their relative passes away, they should immediately take the corpse out of the house, outside, under the open sky, and hold the corpse high up, Then they make the corpse face heaven. Then they shout the name of the person who passed away, and ask him to go to heaven. And they believe, because that man is facing heaven, he can see heaven, and they shout to his soul will naturally go up to heaven, because they help to direct him to heaven, you see. So these Brahmins asked the Buddha, I said, Bhagavan, now that you are here with us, you are an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, I think you can help all the human beings in the world go to heaven. It's an interesting question, isn't it? We also like to know whether the Buddha can use his psychic power to help all of us go to heaven. So the Buddha said, I will ask you a question first. Please answer me first. So the Buddha said, suppose a man came to the edge of a lake, a deep lake, and he took a rock in 2 hands, and he held up this rock and threw it in the middle of the lake. So what happens? The rock will sink into the water. As the rock is sinking into the water, all the people come together and shout at the rock, and praise the rock and ask the rock to float up to the surface and float to the shore. So the Buddha asked the Brahmins, is it possible for the rock to float up? Then they thought for a while, and then they say it's not possible because the rock is something heavy. It will naturally sink in the water. How can it float up? So the Buddha said, in the same way, suppose a man has done a lot of evil. He has not done any good. Killed a lot of people, cheated a lot of people, etc., etc. And when he's passed away, everybody comes along and shouts and asks him to go to heaven. Is it possible? Then after thinking for a while, they said they think it's not possible because this person has done so much evil, like that stone, he will sink into bad rebirth. So the Buddha said, suppose now another man comes to the edge of the lake and he takes a cup, a container, and the container contains oil, and he throws the container with the oil into the middle of the lake. What happens? The container or the cup will start to sink, but the oil, being light, will float to the surface. As the oil is floating up to the surface, suppose all the people came along and shouted at the oil and asked the oil to sink into the water. Is it possible for the oil to sink? And after thinking for a while, they said, no, it's not possible because oil is light, it will naturally float up. So the Buddha said, in the same way, if a person has done a lot of good, has never harmed any living being, when he passes away, even if a lot of people were to come together and shout and curse him, ask him to go to hell, is it possible that he will go to hell? So they said, it's not possible. Being a good man, he will naturally go up to heaven. So, by answering these questions, these people understood what the Buddha meant, that the Buddha himself cannot help us. Whether we rise or we sink depends on our karma. That's why Buddhism is a little bit unlike other religions in the sense that we don't say by becoming a Buddhist that heaven is guaranteed for you. Whether you go to heaven or you go elsewhere depends on your own karma. In Buddhism, we cannot bribe heaven to open the door for us. Now, concerning this, you find, like in the 6th Patriarch Sutra, somebody also asked the Buddha, in the Liu Chu Tan Jing, asked the Buddha, is it true that some people say when we recite the Buddha's name, we can be reborn in the Pure Land? And the 6th Patriarch said, if your heart is pure, the Pure Land is very near. If your heart is impure or evil, the Pure Land is very far. And he said, if people in the East, by reciting the Buddha's name, can be reborn in the West, then what do the people in the West do? So from here, it's quite obvious that our mind, our heart is very important. If we have a good heart, then the Pure Land is very near. If you have a bad heart, an evil heart, Pure Land is very far. Now, another thing, the karma, the result of karma is different for different people, As I said before, it depends on the person who does the karma and on the other person that the karma is done to. And it depends on a few conditions. So, if we you see this, a good example is, for example, if we plant rambutan seeds, firstly we don't expect to get durian fruits. If you plant rambutan seed, you will only get rambutan. And also the amount of rambutan that you are going to get depends on several conditions. Some people plant rambutan seed, they get a tree which bears very little fruit. And some people plant, it might even sometimes the tree can be very short, it bears a lot of fruit. And also whether the fruit is sweet or sour also depends on other conditions. So in the same way, to give a very good example, the Buddha gave this example. Suppose now you are at the back of your house doing some cooking. Then a beggar comes and trying to ask for some money, comes from the front of your house, he sees nobody, and then he walks into your hall, in your front hall, and he finds $10 or $100 on the table. And then he sees nobody around, he pockets the $10 or $100 and he walks out. Just at that time, perhaps you came out from the back and you saw this beggar walking away and you saw your money missing from the table. Most people, what they'll do is either they shout and catch that beggar, or they phone the police and get the beggar arrested, right? So what happens? That beggar ends up in jail, right? But suppose a very famous man came along, suppose some politician, some Tan Sri or some Dato, to visit the constituency. In the same way, he comes to the front of your house. Then you saw him walking away and saw your money missing. Would you call the police? Maybe somebody like maybe our Prime Minister. You think if I call the police, maybe he won't get jail, I get jail. So, see, two persons doing the same karma, the result can be different. So, because of that, the Buddha said, it is possible that a person with very little good karma, who has done a lot of evil deeds, that when he does another small evil deed, the small evil deed can even pull him down to hell. Whereas a person with a lot of blessings, he does the same evil deed, perhaps the Buddha said he might feel sorry for a few days. And after the few days, there is no more karmic debt to pay. So from here, you see, if we have a lot of good karma, it supports us. And even we do some evil, it becomes minimized. And on the other hand, if we have a lot of blessings, if we do some good, then it multiplies, How do we overcome past evil karma? To overcome past evil karma, the Buddha said, we have to do a lot of good karma now. And the Buddha gave a very beautiful simile of salt and water. In the Buddha's days, they did not have fine salt as we have now, they had lumps of salt. So the Buddha said, suppose a man took a lump of salt and he put into a cup of water and he stirred the water and he drank. The water will be very salty, right? But the Buddha said, if a person took the same size of a lump of salt and put it into the river and stirred the river water, and you drink the river water, it's not salty, right? Why? Because in the river there's a lot of water. In the cup there's so little water. Now the Buddha said the water represents the good karma, the salt represents the evil karma. So when we have a lot of good karma, it dilutes our evil karma. That is why it's very important that we do a lot of good to overcome our past evil karma. What is past, we can't do anything about. We can only take care of the present. So to take care of the present, we have to do a lot of good. Another thing is that all karma that we do, or each karma that we do, has a potential to ripen. However, not every karma will ripen. The Buddha said, if every karma will ripen, then we cannot get out of samsara. We cannot get out of the round of rebirths. Why? Because our karmic account is so great. We have been in the round of rebirths, uncountable number of lifetimes. So, if everything had to be paid, then we would not be able to get out of samsara. But however, because not all karma has to ripen, then we can get out of samsara. And a very good example is the example of Angulimala, the bandit who killed hundreds of people. This bandit lived in the forest, and he was so strong and powerful and quick. He killed many people who passed through the forest, and that is partly because he had very good karma from the past. So after doing a lot of killing, the king was asked by the people to get an army to go and kill him, because people were afraid to pass that mountain, because so many people were already killed. And the Buddha saw that this person could be helped. So the Buddha went to the hills alone, and he walked through the hills alone. And this bandit Angulimala, he saw the Buddha walking, and he saw the Buddha was alone. He thought, it's very easy to kill this man. And he had the habit, after killing people, he had the habit of cutting off their thumbs, their thumbs and their fingers, and make it into a garland and wear it around his neck. That's why his name was finger garland, because Anguli is finger, Angulimala, Mala is a garland. So he was very well-known bandit. So when the Buddha walked through the hills, this bandit Angulimala, he came from behind, and he ran after the Buddha with his knife and his bow and arrow and all that, all armed. He ran behind the Buddha and was coming behind. He wanted to kill the Buddha. But even though he ran very fast, he found that he couldn't get near the Buddha, because the Buddha used his psychic power. And however fast he ran, he found he couldn't get near to the Buddha at all. So he stopped. Then he shouted at the Buddha, and he asked the Buddha to stop. And the Buddha turned around and looked at him, and the Buddha told him, I have stopped, but you have not stopped. Then he thought to himself, why this man says I have not stopped? He has stopped. Then he realized that the Buddha was a holy man. So he threw aside his weapons, and then he knelt down in front of the Buddha and asked the Buddha to explain. Then the Buddha told him, I have stopped from harming all beings, but you have not stopped. Then the Buddha taught him some Dhamma, and after listening to the Dhamma from the Buddha, he changed completely. And he asked the Buddha to allow him to become a monk. So the Buddha walked back down the hill, back to the monastery, and Angulimala followed. And then after that, Angulimala became a monk. So the king was asked to go and kill Angulimala, but the reputation of Angulimala was so fierce that even the king was scared, even with his army. So he went to see the Buddha in the forest monastery, hoping to get some blessing from the Buddha so that he won't get killed. So he went to see the Buddha, and Buddha saw him all in armor, all armed with his army. And the Buddha asked him, where are you going? So he said, I have been asked by a lot of people to go and catch and kill this Angulimala. So that's why I was planning to go. And then the Buddha told the king, suppose you saw the Angulimala now as a monk, how would you react? Then the king said, if I saw Angulimala as a monk, said that's something unimaginable. But if I saw him as a monk, I would pay respect to him and support him like other monks. Then the Buddha pointed out to Angulimala, he said, that is Angulimala. So when the king turned around and saw Angulimala, all his hair stood up. This man is so fierce that one look at him, all their hairs will stand up. So then the Buddha pacified the king, said, don't be afraid. He's a changed person. He's no more the same man. And the king found it hard to believe. Then since the Buddha said that is Angulimala, then he had to believe. So after that, he supported this Angulimala. But Angulimala, because his karma of killing so many humans was so great, that after he became a monk, he went on his alms round, Pindabat. Sometimes people would throw rocks at him, and sometimes he'll come back with his head full of blood. And he'll come and with tears in his eyes, he'll come and see the Buddha. And the Buddha asked him to bear it, told him, Angulimala, you have to bear this. If you don't strive hard now, there are hells and all that waiting for you. then he probably knew. So he strove very hard, and then he became an Arahant. And after he became an Arahant, you imagine all that karma that you are supposed to pay back, didn't have to pay back, right? So that shows, if we strive very hard, then we can shorten, all the accounts to talk.